For the want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For the want of a shoe, a horse was lost. For the want of a horse, a rider was lost. For the want of a rider, the battle was lost. For the want of the battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horseshoe nail. The butterfly effect is built on a notion that the world is deeply interconnected, such that one small occurrence can influence a complex larger system. The effect is named after the allegory of the chaos theory. It evokes that a small butterfly flapping its wings can hypothetically cause a typhoon, or it could not. The interesting part of the butterfly effect is that it is virtually impossible to predict whether a small action will cause to a chaotic effect. Hi friends, it's Ariel Seth back, and if you're new here, my name is Ariel Seth, a self-taught computer programmer and an electronics engineering student at the University of Boumediès. Recently, I started my YouTube channel where I share fascinating and intriguing ideas, and in today's video, we are going to dive into the so-called butterfly effect. We are going to understand what the hell is butterfly effect, how does it apply in our lives, anyway, is it worth knowing? So if you feel like that is a very good thing and fascinating thing to know, please consider subscribing and hit the like button. So let's dive into the video. Well, let's dive into it. Now, the world is so complex and vast, and sometimes it may look like your small decisions or actions have little or no impact on a bigger picture. However, I want you to understand that if you pay attention to minute details of your life, you may actually come to understand that a small event became a catalyst to a huge change in your life. For example, if you bumped into a random coffee shop and met with someone who actually happens to work at your dream company, then 5 months later or any time later, you happen to get an interview at that dream company and be hired. Well, going into a coffee shop may actually look like a very small thing. After all, anyone goes into any random coffee shop. But now, landing your dream job at your dream company is a very huge change in your life. Therefore, imagine if you had actually entered that coffee shop maybe 5 minutes or 1 minute late or 5 minutes earlier. Well, you wouldn't have actually gotten that opportunity. But now, this is one of the analogies that can actually explain the butterfly effect. Entering a coffee shop is actually a small thing, but now landing your dream job is the huge change in your life that actually comes by a small thing that happened in your life. From chaos theory, the effect describes how a tiny change in one part of the system can cause a huge non-linear effect elsewhere. Meteorologist Edward Lorenz once explained this thing metaphorically. With one flap of a butterfly's wing in one part of the world can later on cause a tornado weeks later in another part of the world. Well, let's first explain what chaos theory is. The butterfly effect is part of the chaos theory. The chaos theory states that there are limitations to predictions even in small discrete systems. Chaos is possible because systems are extremely sensitive to their initial conditions. Small differences in the starting conditions can over time lead to huge differences in a way that a complex system of interrelated phenomena evolves. Now, systems always have feedback loops, and when these small changes are incorporated, no one can tell whether they won't make an effect because it is out of our control. Chaos theory is specifically interested in the study of random and unpredictable behaviors in systems, even in systems that are supposed to be governed by deterministic laws. Deterministic laws are supposed to remove any randomness in systems. Determinism, in a philosophical sense, is that all systems are supposed to run depending on the previous existing causes. Therefore, the butterfly effect dispels this idea of the deterministic laws or deterministic systems by saying that there are nonlinear ways in which a small change in the system can actually change the effect of the cause. Now, Mr. Edward Lorenz was searching on how he can accurately predict the weather conditions. And so he found out that there are no mathematical linear models that can predict this accurately. Just like you wouldn't know whether you would actually land your dream job by just choosing one coffee shop randomly. He found that the initial conditions were not sufficient indicators for finding the future weather conditions. Lorenz realized that a small change in the initial conditions could drastically lead to very huge differences. when he changed the initial atmospheric conditions by 0.000127, such a small, seemingly less significant change in the atmospheric conditions, the model predicted very huge different values of future weather conditions. Therefore, in 1963, Edward published a paper containing these ideas, the butterfly effect ideas. The paper was titled The Deterministic Non-Periodic Flow. In this paper, he argued that weather conditions were inaccurate, not only because of knowing initial conditions, but also a slight change in the initial conditions would drastically lead to a very huge different value. Therefore, the paper was scientific and jargon heavy, which led Edward to start using a more palatable concept during the interviews, that is the butterfly effect. He likened his idea to a butterfly wing flappings, which represents a tiny change in the atmospheric conditions that would have potential to change the trajectory of a typhoon. He stressed that it couldn't necessarily change the course of events, but that it could, and there could be no way of essentially knowing what caused changes in weather. Lorenz therefore advocated for the deterministic chaos models that account for exponential growth of errors in weather predictions. The butterfly effect demonstrated that causes and effects do not have a purely linear relationship. The effect has applications that actually do not even fall in science. The effect is highly studied in the business sector, and it states that the small initial actions can lead to a much great yield in the future. The effect suggests small actions that could be implemented by businesses and lead to very much results. For example, Dr. Rajagopal writes about the butterfly effect in competitive markets of 2015 in his book and says that the butterfly effect is actually applied. Successful businesses like Apple and Netflix apply this effect, and he demonstrates that by Apple making a very small slight change in their iPhone versions can actually lead to very huge massive results. That's why it is better to focus on the small things that can be done by a business and leave the big things of the outcomes to be worked on by the butterfly effect. On the other hand, one person deciding to recycle a plastic bottle top may actually seem like a very small insignificant action, but the butterfly effect suggests that that small action has a non-linear effect on the carbon emissions, therefore altering the trajectory of climate change in this today's world. Let me read something little from the Decision Lab, and we see how actually our small actions can either affect us positively or impact us negatively. And we are going to connect it with the butterfly effect, and we see how it can actually help us skip this climate change thing. As we earlier speculated, the butterfly effect can demonstrate how small individual actions can help to contribute us to the state of our Earth. There seems to be little agreement on what will happen to the planet as a result of human activity, but it is generally accepted that our activity has done drastic impacts on our environment. Therefore, instead of believing that we are doomed and there is no way for our individual actions to change the trajectory of the climate, the butterfly effect suggests that our small actions could strikingly alter the route we are on. Well, that means that if any small action you do consciously, let's say let it be recycling polythene, let's say recycling any plastic bag, in whatever plastic material, can actually later on result into a very huge result of changing the trajectory of our climate in this globe. So don't underestimate the power of small actions, because according to the butterfly effect, it may lead to a very huge effect. So do not underestimate the power of small actions. Small actions can lead to very huge results. COVID-19 is one of the examples that demonstrate how small actions can lead to huge disastrous effects. It is believed that it started in one food market in China and later on evolved using non-linear multiplications into the whole world. Well, just like we started, for the want of a nail, a shoe was lost. For the want of a shoe, a horse was lost. For the want of a horse, the rider was lost. For the want of the rider, the battle was lost. For the want of the battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horseshoe nail. If you have watched up to this point, you must be this guy who likes fascinating ideas. Therefore, I urge you to subscribe. There is a video I did about how electric trains work. It is just right here. There's another video I recorded about the power of 6G. It's also right here. Please feel free to check them. Like, follow, share, and comment. See you next time.